Hey everybody, I am David Jones. I'm the reservoir manager for the Brazos Valley and Gulf Coast at Chesapeake Energy. And I wanted to talk to everyone a little bit today about candidate selection for shut-ins. I want to start with a quote. There is a critical distinction between candidate selections for shutdown and candidate selection for the collection of shut-in data. These two are materially different things. Number one, we're shutting in a field or partial production because of an external event. The other one is we're shutting down in production to actually gain information from that well. We're talking a little bit about the candidate selection for production shutdown. The first thing we want to talk about is setting a goal. We really need to determine the goal of this shut-in event. Why are we shutting in, and what do we hope to achieve, and what is the actual intent of this project? The second thing we needed to do is determine the stakeholders, identify the groups that are affected and affected by this event. Sometimes we will have to look at our mineral owners, we have to look at the land, the legal groups, and we have to look at the geologists and other partners that we work with of what's going to happen during this shut-in event. We also have to define a strategy, create play optionality by defining multiple scenarios. So there's multiple ways to shut in the field, and it takes a large group of people to sit down together and figure out what exactly we want to do and how we want to do it. And then because the field is shut down, what are the opportunities you now have? What can you do that you weren't able to do before? Are you able to grab some data on these wells or evaluate the scenarios of reopening them? So we're going to go through a short presentation and just talk about how we work through all of these in a production environment. Determining the goal of a shut-in event is really the first big step. And determining the goal of a field shut-in is a key part of success. It orients all the other activities that you're going to do during this time period, ensure everybody is in alignment. We're going to start with a few questions, and it really is to gather the team and sit down and figure out what you're really trying to do during this time. Why is the curtailment of production occurring? Is this because we're being shut in at a compressor station? Is it a new facility we're installing, or is it commodity pricing? All of these different things can cause us to shut down, the order that we shut down in, and what we're trying to do. Also, the scope of this event. Your plan may change depending on how much production needs to be shut in. Are you looking at a shutdown of the entire field, or are we looking at just a shutdown of a portion of the field? Is that going to be 1 month, 2 months, or 6 month shut in? All of those can be change the way you're shutting in, change which wells you're going to shut in according to that plan. So having a good feel for why you're shutting in, do you have any choice, how much choice do you have, and then how big is this event going to be? And that's really going to help by determining the stakeholders. Everyone's going to be affected and impacted by this event a little bit differently. We have lease and mineral owners that we have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure we're producing their wells and their minerals in the most efficient way possible. We have opportunities for our shareholder. We have to maximize the dollars that we're given and the investments we're given back to them. We have different teams working this asset. We have land, legal. What are our options? Certain leases have certain requirements that we have to meet. We have to review all of those and make sure we're legally doing what we're allowed to do. And there's infrastructure and facility constraints. What do we have to work with? Where is this oil, gas going? Where is the water going? What facilities do we have to work with? And then our key subsurface stakeholders. So how is this reservoir going to react to the shutting event? Do you have swelling clays that may be affected? Do you have embedment issues that may increase or decrease because of this event? The production engineers are the ones who are going to go pick the candidate selection. So how are they going to go and shut the wells in? What equipment are they going to remove? And then for the reservoir engineers, determining which candidates are the best for this event, which ones make the most money, which ones make the least money. How do I want to analyze and shut in this? All of these stakeholders are going to have some key options. Some you're going to be able to touch directly and talk through, and some you're going to have to consider in your planning process. But really bringing everyone together in as wide a group possible to determine what you want to do is key to success of this project. After we've determined the goal, identified the stakeholders, really the next part of this is to define the strategy for shutting in the field. This requires evaluating lots of options according to the goal and stakeholders, and then really come out with a value and risk associated with each path that we can produce. A couple of endpoints here are, can I produce my high volume wells and shut in my low volume wells? So here I'm going to produce very few wells and shut in a majority of the field. On the other end of the spectrum, what I want to shut in the fewest well possible is maybe look at some of those wells that are high volume, and I can shut in maybe a fraction of the wells, but leave most of my wells producing. A couple of considerations you really need to work through is what are the volumes I need to achieve? If I have to shut in a full field of 1,000 wells, that is quite a lot of work to go through lease by lease, shut in wells that may have issues coming back online. What's the break-even cost of each well? That's going to be a big consideration. What's the lease operating expense by the well and by the field? So this could be a very germane topic of if I shut in all of my wells and just produce a few, you may not actually reduce the lease operating expense of the total field very far or very much. So really you could do this a couple of different ways. What are subsurface considerations? What phase of this well's life is it in? Is it in the very early phase where shutting in the well could be detrimental to its early production? Or it could be very late in the life of the well. We're shutting in a low producing well, you might not be able to return it to production. So what's the middle ground that we want to shut wells in? And then there's a cost associated with going to each lease, shutting off the valves, pickling the well, pulling equipment. All of these need to be considered in this process. For each strategy, I would recommend going through a SWOT analysis. This is where you identify the strengths of each of these strategies, identify the weaknesses of those strategies. What could go wrong with that strategy? Does it create an opportunity? What opportunities could you generate from this? And that could be collecting data, or it could be a chance to renegotiate an agreement. And then what are some of the threats to value that you look at in this project? Could you end up damaging some of the field? All of this is going to create an opportunity to have value and risk, and that trade-off is what you're really going to want to look at on each of these options. And then as a team with stakeholders, you're going to figure out here is the value for this proposition and the risk, and this is what we're going to accept together. And because we've gone through this event, we're really going to evaluate the opportunities. Anytime we have a large natural or field disturbance, such as a shut-in, there's going to be a large amount of data that's generated. These teams, we can now evaluate that and use that as a competitive advantage when we're analyzing the results and employ those learnings in future development. And really, this is an opportunity for the teams. This is where, as a team, we can analyze that productivity with analytical modeling and look at what happens pre and post of a shut-in event. What kind of rate transit signal do you have before and after? This is a really low-hanging fruit. We're using rates and pressures. It's going to be easy to look at and see if we've damaged the reservoir. You may have stimulated it. What happened during that time period, and what conclusions can you draw? If you have downhole gauges, an impermeable enough reservoir, can you do an actual pressure transient analysis during that shut-in? And so you may have that data in place and set up beforehand, and that's something you can go ahead and get. Another low-hanging fruit is offset interference testing. By sequencing your shut-in events on a pad, what happens to all the wells on that pad? If I shut in this well, does an offset neighbor see a production spike? And can you judge the communication between wells during that event? Those are just a few examples, but you're going to have a lot of them during the shut-in event. And can you start gathering the information on those wells and figuring out the best way to analyze those results during this time period of the shut-in? And that's really kind of the nutshell of what you go through the events, right? I want to set a goal, determine the stakeholders who are going to help me determine if that's the goal, the right goal for us, help to define the strategy for this shut-in event. And then really it's up to the engineers and the team to identify the opportunities that you can take advantage of during this time period, analyze that data, and then use that for your future development. With that, I really am open to taking questions, and hope you guys have a good day. Bye.